Another controversial one for you guys today. The Machiavelli question: when to play politics. You've probably heard people say things like, I don't play office politics, or I just want to do good work and let that speak for itself. This is a noble sentiment, but the uncomfortable truth is that when you work for a bad boss, refusing to understand workplace politics does not make you principled. It makes you vulnerable. Today, we're going to talk about Machiavelli, power dynamics, and the crucial question of when you need to engage with the political reality of your workplace instead of pretending it doesn't exist. Who was Machiavelli and what did he understand? Niccolo Machiavelli was a Renaissance political philosopher who wrote a book called The Prince, and he's famous for being ruthlessly pragmatic about power. He was not interested in how things should work in an ideal world. He was interested in how they actually work in reality. His core insight was that power doesn't operate according to fairness or merit. It operates according to perception, relationships, and strategic positioning. People often summarize his philosophy as the ends justify the means. But what he really understood was that in environments where power is unequally distributed, naive idealism gets you crushed. I'm against all this, by the way, on a personal level, but playing office politics is part of the game. Now, I'm not suggesting that you become manipulative or abandon your ethics. What I am suggesting is that you have to understand the political landscape that you're operating in, especially when you have a bad boss. Politics in the workplace is not inherently evil. It's just the informal system of influence and relationships that exists alongside the formal hierarchy. When you have a good boss and a healthy workplace, you can sometimes afford to ignore politics because the formal system works reasonably well. But when you have a bad boss, the informal political system becomes critical to your survival because the formal system is broken. You have to think about it this way. Your bad boss might have more power than they deserve based on their competence. This is a political reality. It's not a merit-based one. Understanding how they got that power and who supports them is not being manipulative. It's being realistic about the game board that you're actually playing on. So when do you need to engage and understand that the politics shift goes from optional to necessary? The first situation is when your bad boss is actively undermining you. If they are taking credit for your work or spreading misinformation about your performance or positioning you as a scapegoat, you cannot afford to just keep your head down and hope that good work will save you. You need to understand who has influence, who makes decisions about your future, and how to make sure the right people know what you're actually contributing. This might mean building relationships with your bad boss's peers or managers. It could mean documenting your work in a way that creates visibility beyond your immediate team. If you're trying to move internally to a different role or department, if your escape plan involves transferring away from your bad boss rather than leaving the company entirely, you need to understand how these moves actually happen. They rarely happen through official processes alone. Someone usually needs to advocate for you. Someone needs to see you as valuable enough to pull you into their team. And that requires political awareness and relationship building. You need to know who the decision makers are and what they care about. The third situation is when you're trying to protect yourself or others from your bad boss's worst behaviors. Maybe you're trying to push back on an unreasonable policy, or maybe you're trying to get support for a colleague who's being treated unfairly. None of that happens by simply being right or having justice on your side. It happens by understanding how power structures and knowing how to navigate them effectively. What does playing politics actually look like? I want to be specific about engaging with workplace politics because I think people think it's more sinister than it actually is. Playing politics means you're just being strategic about relationships. You're building connections with people beyond your immediate team, not because you're being fake, but because these relationships might matter for your career or your ability to get things done. If you understand who influences your boss and make sure that these people have an accurate picture of your work, that will help you. Playing politics means you're being thoughtful about timing and framing. It's when you disagree with your bad boss or push back on something you think is unreasonable, you have to think about how to position that disagreement in a way that it's likely to succeed for you. Maybe presenting it as solving a problem that they care about rather than as criticism of their decision. Maybe it means being silent one moment and choosing the right moment when they're more receptive rather than just speaking up whenever you get frustrated. It's not about being dishonest. It's about being strategic with your communication. There is a difference. Playing politics means that you become more aware of informal rules and power dynamics within your workplace. You notice who gets listened to in meetings and you study what makes them credible. You have to understand that your bad boss has their own pressures and relationships that influence their behavior, and you can factor that into how you treat them. You can recognize that perception sometimes matters just as much, if not more, than reality. So you think about how your work and your communication are being perceived rather than just if it's objectively good. Because the subline between all of this is you should be a good worker, right? Like that is what I would advocate to you. But on top of that, you have to ensure that it's being perceived as good work. Playing politics does not mean lying, backstabbing, or sabotaging other people to get yourself ahead. It does not mean abandoning your values or doing things you're morally opposed to. Machiavelli was comfortable with those tactics, but you can be politically savvy without being unethical. The goal is to not become a villain. The goal is to stop being naive about power and influence within your workplace. The tricky question on this balance point is how much should you engage with politics before it starts compromising who you are? And this is where you need to be really honest with yourself and with your boundaries. There's a version of political engagement that's protecting yourself and advancing your legitimate interests. That version is necessary and smart. But there's another version that requires you to constantly calculate and manipulate every interaction and to hide who you really are and to prioritize advancement over everything else, including your integrity. That version will hollow you out even if it succeeds. The way you find balance is by being clear about your ultimate goal. If your goal is to rise in this particular organization at all costs, you might need to engage more deeply with politics than is comfortable. But if your goal is to survive this bad boss situation and maintain your values and build towards something better, then your political engagement can be more limited and strategic. You do what's necessary to protect yourself and create options, but you don't have to fundamentally change who you are in that process. You have to remember that Machiavelli was writing about how to gain and maintain political power. You are not necessarily trying to become a prince. You're just trying to navigate a difficult work scenario without getting crushed. This requires understanding power dynamics, but it doesn't require you to become a political operator as your full-time job. You have to learn enough about workplace politics to not be blindsided by them. You have to build enough strategic relationships to have some protection and options. You have to be thoughtful about perception and positioning so that you're not accidentally sabotaging yourself through naivety. Office politics exist whether you participate or not. The only question is whether you're going to understand them well enough to navigate or whether you're going to pretend they don't exist and hope that somehow someone protects you. They won't, and it won't happen. Under a bad boss, political awareness is not about being manipulative. They are the ones manipulating it. For you, it's about being realistic. You have to start paying attention to informal power structures going on around you. You have to notice who has influence and why. You should think strategically about how relationships work and how communication works. You are not selling your soul. You are just opening your eyes to how things really work. I hope this was helpful. Be good people out there. Act with ethics, but also protect yourself because no one else is going to save you.